Hey everyone, welcome back to the Innovative podcast series, Dialog Yoga, where we speak with some of the A-plus talent and try to incorporate their best practices. I am Apoorv, been with Innovative for almost 4 years now. It has been an incredible journey, currently leading partnership and channel sales efforts. Our guest today is Daniel Chaitow, VP Strategy and Corporate Development here at Innovator. My boss and mentor. He has 12 plus years of experience in healthcare investment banking, has worked with some of the larger companies like PwC, LexisNexis in the past, and is a huge cricket fan like most of the Indians. So, Daniel, welcome.
Thank you, Apoorv. Good to be here.
Awesome. So, topic for episode 3 of our Time Management Hacks podcast is organizing work around your energy levels, right? So, just a disclaimer on that, right? Sometimes we are so laser focused while working that nothing actually distracts us, versus sometimes we just find it so tough to get out of the bed. So, conventional wisdom says that productivity is essentially equal to time management, but recently we have seen a shift to this whole new ideology where we are managing priorities and also energy around the work to get the best outcome. So Daniel, would you mind help us understand this technique and maybe also add a little tinge of your own personal experience to help us maybe better relate to this hack? So the topic for the podcast today is organizing work around your energy levels. So Daniel, over to you.
Got it. Thanks for that, Apoorv, and makes sense. I think, I kind of like how you framed it, that, energy or sort of time management is the equivalent to productivity. But less, I think, the purpose of the conversation here is sort of less so around time, essentially, picking, what to do, or when to do things, but picking what to do when. So, not necessarily just working out which hours you're going to be working in, but which hours you're going to be most effective at what tasks. So for example, if I knew that, I had to run a marathon and I had to eat, and I had to do some work, it would probably be a bad idea to run a marathon, then work, then eat. And I'd probably be worse at all three of those, as opposed to if I got up, did some work, ate, and then run a marathon. And so, the order of that's really important. At least I'm led to believe I've never actually run a marathon.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So I think, the point is that, it's very easy to just sort of do what's in front of you, and sort of, triage via what seems most urgent, especially in, today's environment where there's a lot coming at you, and a lot of the time the workday is like drinking out of a fire hose, with lots of things coming in all the time and just trying to deal with what's happening. But the reality is that an hour here or an hour there or a few hours either way on a lot of different tasks won't make a big difference to when you've got it done. It won't make a big difference to the ultimate outcome of when people need it. But, being sensible about when you're in the best place to do it, when you're in the best place to run that marathon or sit down and have that meal is important. And so, one of the articles I read recently on this kind of said, we all have, natural rhythms throughout the day. You have your, sort of high energy level time. You have sort of your, sort of lower energy level time. So high energy level where it's like great for creative assignments and sort of thinking and sort of new ideas and sort of really sort of deep work. Then you have your low energy time, which is like good for process, where you kind of don't need to think too much and you can kind of get through things like something as simple as just doing the dishwasher or even just like checking off lists or doing chores or sort of routine process work. And then you've got the time that's sort of best for relaxation or going for a run or exercise or eating, and if you kind of do all those in the right time that you're your body's sort of best suited to do it, you kind of essentially getting time back because you're more efficient at doing things, doing a creative assignment at a time when you're when you're in a creative mood, you probably get through it in half the time that if you try and do it later on in the evening when you're dead, or you're sort of not ready to be working creatively. And so so the method really sort of suggests three steps to it. Is one is observe your own natural like body and rhythms around when you're in those three states. Understand when you're in your sort of high energy, when you're in your low energy, and when you're in your sort of relaxation required. For me, for example, like after lunch, I always used to sort of struggle to do work in the office, between, whatever it is, like 1:30 and 3:30. It's just not a good time. So, at that point in time, like post lunch, planning to sort of get into something, really difficult and creative is probably not a good idea. And so I shouldn't be sort of scheduling, design sessions or whiteboarding for that, period of the day. And so, once you sort of observed, those times, this is the first step, understanding your own natural rhythm. Second step is kind of really, making sure that you plan around that. And so you plan around your day around that, as kind of said, and sort of have tasks ready to go. And the third is, sort of make sure you optimize the time that you're going to be using. So, a great example is, writing a to-do list is actually a high energy task because it requires a lot of thinking, right? But getting through the to-do list might be a low energy task because you can just kind of knock off things that are in front of you and pick the ones that are sort of super easy to do. So, if you haven't sort of optimized your time, you haven't sort of done your high energy planning and to-do list, then you're not going to be effective at like getting through some of that process to-do list in the sort of low energy time periods.
Yep, absolutely. Loved how you summed it up in 3 easy steps. And I think we should also tell our listeners as to what energy means. It's not like, it's not something like caffeine energy where like, I want to punch a hole in the ground, but it's simply being present in the moment and by heart so that you're able to focus. So that's something I'll just put out there like that. So Anil, now that we have talked about that technique, and I believe that everyone has different cognitive peaks throughout their day. So essentially, if after evening you don't feel like working, afternoon, lunchtime you don't feel like working, it's not the same with everyone else. Maybe someone feels energized after having a midday meal. What are some of the ways to sustain that cognitive peak? Right? How do you replenish your energy levels throughout the day?
Sure. Yeah. So there's sort of two pieces to that, I'd say. One of which is, the relaxation piece is doing that well. I think like if you go and, sit on the couch during your downtime and like eat, a bunch of chocolate, you're probably not going to bounce back and be ready for sort of the next piece. So I think, using it for exercise or, relaxation or yoga or, or just eating well is probably a good sort of activity. And then, something I've always sort of followed is, really kind of keeping yourself, at sort of a, high level of intensity. So you kind of, that's where you perform. They have essentially this thing called the stress diathesis model, whereby, people perform at the optimum when they're sort of quite stressed but not overstressed. If you've got a 70% workload, then you're going to have plenty of downtime. You're going to procrastinate. You're not going to sort of hit every task with high energy because you kind of know that you're not trying to like, that time's not something you need to like hold on to. And on the other hand, if you got just way too much to do, like you get caught up in the worrying about all the stuff you have to do and you don't become action oriented. So for me, it's about like, relaxing really well, relaxing in sort of a determined fashion, but then also keeping, the energy and the things to do, consistent and, continually attacking them. So you're never sort of moving into either side of the sort of bell curve of the stress diathesis model.
Yep, indeed. I think as a person who is always under a chronic fatigue so far, energy management is so important for me, to get stuff done. So that's really helpful, Daniel, and definitely gave a lot of insights. And I'm hoping that our listeners are able to understand these concepts and break it down in their day-to-day activities. Try to, like you mentioned, put down a list of tasks that are high energy, that requires your creative juices, and just focus on those throughout the day. I think for me personally, earlier it used to be that I'll put everything on calendar and try to adhere by that timeline. And if I'm not able to do something, I'll feel bad throughout the day. But right now it has changed to, these are 3 of my important tasks today. If I'm able to hit those along with one act of self-care, I feel fulfilled throughout the day and energized for the next day. So I'll just close out on a note which I read somewhere floating around. It's not how many hours you put in that determines how productive you are. It's how much energy or focused attention you're able to invest during the hours you work. So on that note, we'll close this podcast. And thank you everyone for listening in. We have our upcoming podcast ready, and the topic for that one would be business processes. So look out for that. Thank you.
Thank you.